want to continue this conversation. Jared Bernstein, former chief economist for Vice President Joe Biden. He is now a senior fellow with the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, CNBC contributor as well. And Genevieve Wood, a senior advisor and spokesperson for the Heritage Foundation.
Good morning.
Good morning to both of you.
Thank you.
Jared, you listened to the debate last night, and it just, I mean, it's hard to understand, especially on the health care issue, where you think this party is ultimately headed.
Yes, I think that's true, and I think that's actually a good place to be. I thought the debate, while the format was very unfortunate and nobody had time to really explain anything, was precisely the debate that the Democrats need to have, because I don't think it's clear which path is more appealing to the Democratic electorate. Now, the base, the kind of Twitter base is very outspoken regarding let's take a leapfrog jump right into Medicare for all and skip the more incremental sort of path dependency ideas around a public option, giving people a choice, Medicare for all who want it, Medicare for more. And again, I think that's a really important debate to have. But I do think the commonalities, and Kayla brought this out, is that health care has to change, has to become more accessible, more affordable, and the Democrats are much better positioned to do that for you than Republicans.
But, Jared, you're not worried that the parties, that this is may be saleable within the party, but may not be saleable to the general public?
I think what's saleable to the general public is exactly what's under debate right now, and that's why I think it's so important. We still have ample time to work this out. It is early. It is preseason. You saw, you're going to see 20 people on that stage. And whether the more moderate path or the more left-leaning path appeals more to the Democratic electorate is yet to be seen. I think the moderates are making interesting inroads, and that this notion of path dependency and getting to where we want to go incrementally is gaining some traction.
Genevieve, do you think that the moderates are winning this, or is the left pulling it even more left?
Yeah, well, I mean, it depends on who you ask, right? I mean, if you listen to the audience that was there last night, they didn't like it so much when the moderates asked the questions of Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders when it came to things like Medicare for all and their health care plans. They wanted the more the better. So, look, I was encouraged to hear them be asked those questions, but let's keep in mind, yes, to the left is Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Harris, and that we're going to hear tonight, and others. But the reality is everybody on that stage wants to spend more money. And that's whether we're talking about health care, where we're talking about free tuition for college. I mean, you name the program, everybody on that stage, to a certain degree, wants to spend more money. And as you just talked about in your previous segment, at some point you have to ask the question, who's going to pay the bills? And I know that Elizabeth Warren and others say, well, it's just going to be the rich. But the truth is, you know, to pay for everything that the folks on that stage were talking about last night, that we're going to hear from tonight, you could only, you know, the rich will only pay about 6% of what they're talking about, which means everybody else is going to be in this too. And when you start talking to average Americans, middle-income earners, and they realize how much taxes are going to have to go up to pay for these things, you see a real drop in support.
Jared, did you see the Bureau of Economic, I'm sure you did, and Genevieve, you can weigh in. Bureau of Economic Analysis on Tuesday published the annual revisions to personal income data. The surprise was a huge jump in disposable income and employee compensation.
Yeah.
I mean, these were pretty big. These are good, Jared. You can't.
Yeah, those are good numbers.
And it flies in the face of the idea that we used to hear about secular stagnation during the previous administration. That's why wages weren't going up.
Yeah,
will you concede that wages are starting to rise, maybe
Absolutely.
because of some of the policies, or it was just time?
I mean, we have a very tight labor market, and that always pushes up wages. But if you look at the middle of the pay scale, which I think is really important, especially in the context of these debates and what the Democrats were talking about, some of the points about corporate power, you actually see the median wage is growing slower than both the bottom and the high end.
But the economy's a headwind. Genevieve, isn't this something Trump can run on? I mean,
well, and this is a problem for Democrats, is that unemployment is low historically across the board. You name the group that you want to talk about, numbers are lower for them. And when you talk about wages, since the tax cut of over a year ago, it's actually the folks at the 25% at the bottom, their wages have gone up almost the most in terms of seeing growth in their actual paycheck. And look, the average family in this country got $1,000 to $2,000 back in a tax cut. 9 out of 10 of Americans benefited from the tax cut plan. So look, I don't think we want to get debate about tweets. I definitely agree on that. But if the president runs on the economy, I think it's going to be tough for somebody on the left to come in and say, let's spend a lot more money. And by the way, we're going to have to take some of that tax cut you got. We're going to have to take that back.
You have to be really careful about throwing out aggregate numbers. You talk, Joe, about the personal income data. That's the aggregate income in the whole economy. I totally agree, by the way, that the low end is doing pretty well. That has to do with low unemployment. It also has to do with minimum wage hikes. If you actually look where the low end is doing better, it's in states that raise their minimum wages, something Republicans vehemently oppose. But you can't get away from the fact that most of this growth that we're talking about has gone to the top end of the scale. And the Democrats are right about that. And that's why bringing down inequality, typically through taxes on wealth, is a live issue for them.
Yeah, but Jared, the problem is, as you know, there aren't enough rich people to pay for all this stuff. I mean, the top 10% of earners already pay over 70% of taxes.
I'm going to help you here, Genevieve, because I want to go to Jared on this final question here, which is, during the debate, Elizabeth Warren was effectively asked, if you do this Medicare for All program, if you do all the things she's talking about, are you going to ultimately need to raise taxes on the middle class? And she very explicitly said, no, we're going to raise taxes on billionaires and corporations. That's how we're going to pay for it. And somehow that seemed to end the conversation. It didn't end the conversation in my mind, and I'm going to ask you if it ended the conversation in yours, because I don't know how you make the math work if that's the case. No,
it didn't end the conversation in my mind either, and I take your point. I think what she was trying to say is that anything you pay more in taxes, you'll get back in lower premium cost, and I think that's important. But
no, she said lower cost total. She said lower cost total for the middle class.
So the question is, who is the middle class? Now, the median household income in this country, that never came up. The median household income in this country is $60,000. I don't think we should raise taxes on families at the middle on down. But I also don't think, I agree with Genevieve, I don't think we can get there on the backs of just the top 1%. So we have to be much more precise about who we're talking about.
Jared, want to thank you. Genevieve, thank you very, very much. Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.